Good day, everyone. My name is John Michael Francisco Himoro of Block 109. Our lesson for today is all about perfect and imperfections juries. In his attempts to explain his views, Kant provides us with several examples. We have already considered one of these, making a false promise. His conclusion is that we should not make a false or lying promise, both because we could not consistently well it for all and because it violates our obligation to treat persons as persons and not to use them only for our own purposes. Kant calls such duties perfect duties. What is perfect duties? Perfect duties, they are sometimes described as necessary duties. Perfect duties are absolute prohibition against attitudes and actions that violate a moral maxim of respecting the dignity of others. For example, there is an absolute prohibition against the lying promise or found or demonstrating contempt for the dignity of others. A perfect duties always holds true. There is a perfect duties to tell the truth, so we must never lie. Example. From the perspective of the first form of the categorical imperative, we have a perfect duty not to do those things that could not ever exist and are inconceivable as universal practices. Using the second form of the categorical imperative, we have a perfect duty not to do what violates the requirements to treat persons as end in themselves. However, some duties are more flexible. Kant calls these duties imperfect duties. What is imperfect duties? Imperfect duties, sometimes also called meritorious duties. Consider another example he provides. Egoism. Ethical egoism is the view that we may rightly seek only our own interests and help others only to extent that doing so all benefits us. See Chapter 4. Unimperfect duties allows flexibility. Beneficence is an imperfect duty because we are not obligated to be completely beneficent at all times, but may choose the times and places in which we are. Beneficence is an imperfect duty. An imperfect duty is a duty which one must not ignore but admits of multiple means of fulfillment. Kant specifies two imperfect duties. First, the duty of self-improvement. The duty of self-improvement, from a broadly Kantian point of view, self-improvement depends the view that there is such as obligation, and that is an obligation that each person owes to him or herself. Example, one's on health, security, wisdom, moral goodness, and happiness. Next, specify imperfect duties is the duty to aid others. Example of imperfect duties according to Kant. First, to develop one's talents in an imperfect duty towards oneself. Next, to contribute to the happiness of others is an imperfect duty towards others. The distinction between perfect and imperfect duties will have implications for handling conflicts among different duties. Perfect duties will take precedence over imperfect ones. We cannot help some by violating the rights of others. Our next lesson is all about variations on Kant and deontology. Just as there are contemporary versions of end developments within the utilitarian tradition, there are also many contemporary versions of Kantian and deontological moral theory. One is found in the moral philosophy of W.D. Ross. We also held that there are things we ought and ought not be regardless of the consequences. We discussed Ross in Chapter 3 in relation to pluralism. According to Ross, we have duties not only of beneficence, but also to keep promises, pay our debts, and be good friends and parents and children. Contrary to Kant, Ross believed that we can know through moral intuition in any instant that we ought to do. Sometimes we are faced with a complex of moral duties. It seems intuitive that we ought to be both loyal and honest, but we cannot be both. We have prima facies or conditional duties of loyalty and honesty. In case of conflicting duties, according to Ross, we have to consider which duty is the stronger, that is, which has the greater balance of rightness over wrongness. In choosing honesty in some situations, however, one does not negate or forget that one also has a duty to be loyal. Obvious problems arise for such a jury. For example, how does one go about determining the amount of rightness or involved in some action? Don't people have different intuitions about the rightness or wrongness of any particular action? This is a problem of anyone who holds that intuition in the basis for morality. One of the most noted contemporary versions of Kant's moral philosophy is found in the political philosophy of John Rawls. In a theory of justice, Rawls applies some aspect of Kantian principle to issues of social justice. According to Rawls, justice is fairness. To know what is fair, we must put ourselves imaginatively in the position of a group of free and equal rational beings who are choosing principles of justice for their society. In thinking of person as free and equal rational being in order to develop principles of justice, Rawls is securely in the Kantian tradition of moral philosophy. Kant also stresses autonomy. It is this aspect of our nature that gives us our dignity as persons. Kant's categorical imperative also involves universalization. We must do only those things that we could will that everyone do. It is only a short move from these nations or autonomy and universalization to the Rawlsian's requirements to choose those principles of justice that we could accept no matter which position in society we happen to occupy. For details about Rawls' principles, see Chapter 14. Kantian and other versions of deontology continue to be influential. You will be able to better evaluate the Kantian theory as you see aspects of it applied to issue in Part 2 of this text. The reading selection in this chapter from Kant's fundamental principles of the metaphysics of morals contains the key elements of his moral philosophy. As the title implies, Kant is trying to establish the foundations of morality. He begins by claiming that the only thing that is good without qualifications is a good will. He goes on to explain duty and the categorical imperative while applying these ideas to some basic examples. Thank you for listening. God bless.